Hello, everybody. How's it going this week? We're back at you with another lesson. This week, we are going to be taking a look at irony and the different types that go along with it. We're going to be looking again at some examples and then eventually wrapping up with how you can actually apply this to your own story that you're writing.
Yeah, so we're going to be hitting quite a few standards when we're going through this. Same ones we've done before. We are still in the process of writing a narrative, and it is an imagined experience that we're working on this time, and we are going to try to use some techniques. And this time the technique we're going to focus on is irony. So we're going to try to figure out how to include that so that we can make our final product a little more clear and coherent. And it will help with its development too, and development of the characters. And like we said, we're going to be reading a story again, and you can again read one story, and that's what you're expected to do for this unit. But if you want to, you can read multiple stories. You can read all of them if you want and get some extra credit. Now, just a real quick note, the way the extra credit is going to work, obviously this is pass-fail, so it can kind of make up for something that you didn't do earlier. If you want to, if you didn't quite get that done, I can put that grade in that way to help boost you. Or if you know, like you had a 58 on a quarter and you need to boost one of your quarters up to get a little bit better of a grade, you're welcome to do that too. So I can apply that extra credit that way.
All right, so your overall goal for the lesson today is obviously to write your own story or poem or play, which was what we've been working with. And just a reminder, 5 pages double spaced, clear central theme, and thoughtfully crafted using these lessons that we've been going through. Again, that's just applying each different lesson that we have, somehow applying that element to your story. And again, the story is a great way to bring attention to something you think is important. So you should be providing insight and understanding to this idea. How you connect to the situation, because most likely they won't know the situation that you're writing about. That's what you want to go into assuming. And allows you to fully explain something without actually having to physically show them, being bound by that reality. You can bring someone to that reality.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it so you can really use writing a story in order to get a point across, is the fact that you don't have to have it be bound to what the real events were. And there's certainly a place for that too. But if your idea is to communicate an idea, sometimes you don't want it to be stuck with exactly what the real facts are. So I wanted to talk to you really quickly because this is the last one of this type of lesson that we're going to be doing, and we've been doing them for what it seems like forever. It was actually before we even left school that we were doing this. So
It's been a long time.
It's been forever. I mean, we were supposed to cover 2 to 3 of these a week instead of covering 2 to 3 of these, or covering 1 a week. So it really lengthened this unit, to say the least. And I think we lost the whole Gatsby book as a result. But oh well. What you have to do here, and I just want to remind you that 5 pages, it can be a spoken word poem. Now, if it's a spoken word poem, you are going to have to do some sort of a performance of it. That performance can be something where you get a hold of me or Mr. Strebel and do it into a Zoom, and then we can just record the Zoom so that we have some sort of a document of it to be able to give you credit. You could also do a video of yourself and just send us the video or a link for that video. Any way that you can in order to get that to us. And that would work, because obviously we aren't going to be able to have you perform in front of the classroom. Another option is the short story, and this is probably the one that I think is the one most people are probably going for. And in the short story, if you're going the short story route, there's a few things I want you to remember. First of all, if you have dialogue, that's when people talk back and forth. if you have dialogue, each time there's a new speaker, there's a new paragraph. So that's why sometimes it almost looks like a column, you know, of people talking back and forth. And it's because each time there's a new speaker, it's a new one. So that's something to remember.
That's like the only situation where you can actually have like a 1 sentence paragraph.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the bonus, right? You get the 1 sentence, but you can have something that barely even counts as a sentence, right? You can say so-and-so said yes.
Yeah, so that could be that'll, you know, throw some people off sometimes. I'm like, this just doesn't look right because it's so short. But anytime a new person's speaking, you got a new quote, new indent, new hit return, hit tab.
And actually, it really makes a lot of sense because it's supposed to be the paragraph is going to be when you have somebody's or you have a new idea. And of course, although Mr. Strebel and I seem like we might be in each other's heads sometimes, we're not actually thinking each other's thoughts. So that's why it's, you know, one paragraph for Mrs. Shumagala, one paragraph for Mr. Strebel, another one for Mrs. Shumagala, or whomever those characters, I don't imagine will be the characters in your short story. But that's just something sort of in that realm for you to be thinking about. But the short story is 5 pages. We were going to have you publish this somehow. I certainly would encourage that still, but I don't think it's, I'm not going to be able to get to you to be able to help guide you as much through that. But we might put up something like some of the places that you could send things to, and I certainly would be very into some extra credit and things for that. And the last one is a 1-act play. 1-act plays, basically it's the same idea as the short story, only this time you're taking you're making a drama, like it's something that would be performed. As far as in the same way that we talked about the short story having the dialogue, this time each character that speaks, you're going to put the name of the character and then like a colon and then what the person says. And then anything they do or anything about the setting or anything like that would go inside parentheses, you know, to kind of tell the actor what to do on stage. So those are some interesting bits that kind of change the structure of how you put together, you know, the sort of physical structure of how you put together a 1-act play. But if you really just want what people are saying and not a ton of, you know, their inner thoughts and all that other stuff, you can get some of those inner thoughts. Like think back to Macbeth. We did it quite a lot by him having a lot of monologues and where he was sort of on stage soliloquies where he's all by himself and saying things. So those are some different ways that you can do it. But again, 5 pages. I always have people ask, does it have to be only 5 pages? No, you can go more if you want to. And I know some people probably will because people get into their stories. So they often become quite a bit more than that. And you've been thinking about and developing this idea for a long time. But you do have to make sure that you have that setting. You do have to make sure that you add a little bit of this irony bit. You have to make sure there's some foreshadowing, which makes everything go together. All of those things will be expected to be in there. But you've been working hard at this all along. So that shouldn't be too hard. Which brings us to irony.
Yeah, so the theme that we're actually working with for this lesson, what is irony? It's based what it is. Irony is a figure of speech in which words are used in such a way that their intended meaning is different from the actual meaning of the words. It can also be a situation that ends up in quite a different way than what is generally anticipated by the audience, both the Facebook characters. And then in simple words, it's the difference between appearance and reality. And so you'll see at the right, we have an embedded video. Unfortunately, we can play it through this, but there's going to be no sound. So you will have to click off of here, pause us and click off. And it's by Bo Burnham. He's a pretty funny stand-up comedian who also does like songs and stuff during his act. And it's pretty relevant to irony and what we're going to be
And you'll be able to find in this, we're going to go over in just a few moments, you'll be able to find that there are like 3 basic types of irony. And if you kind of listen to what that is and then watch this, you'll realize that all of them exist in this particular piece. And it really is funny. So I gave you the clean version. You can certainly go on YouTube anywhere and find all sorts of Bo Burnham stuff. 3/4 of his stuff is ironic. That's how he makes things funny. But this one in particular, I think works pretty well. So, and please, remember, it is comedy. So please, remember that it's mildly inappropriate, but just mildly.
So if you're so give us a pause and go check him out now. All right. So you should have watched that Bo Burnham video, and now you should be back with us. We're going to kind of go over some examples from Macbeth that you probably should remember from earlier in the year.
Yeah, if you guys remember, we talked dramatic irony a lot during the Macbeth unit, like a lot. So hopefully you remember that term. So this first one that we're talking about is dramatic irony. And if you remember, this is whenever the audience or the people around someone know more than the character themselves. So we knew, for example, that Macbeth was going to be the Thane of Cawdor before Macbeth did. We knew that from listening to the captain at the beginning who was speaking. We knew that Macbeth had been such a valiant warrior. He had saved the king's son. He had done all of those things. And so as a result, he was going to be named the Thane of Cawdor. And then the witches came in and said, in between, so we already knew that was reality, but Macbeth didn't. So we knew what was going to happen. And then Macbeth heard it from the witches, and then he heard it. And then he mistakenly then believed it was more that the witches had given him the Thane of Cawdor than the king. And so that's one of those big things that set up the whole problem for the whole story. I also remember always, whenever we see, everybody literally almost laughs out loud when they hear Duncan as he's walking in to the castle, and they know that Lady Macbeth and Macbeth have basically set a trap to kill him. And he says, "Oh, what a sweet, wonderful, beautiful place this is." That's dramatic irony. We all kind of laugh. We're like, no, don't go in there, right? And then, of course, when he gives the diamond to Lady Macbeth, because she's such a wonderful hostess, and we know that she literally is planning on killing him. So all of those things would be dramatic irony. And it's any other time that you know something and the characters don't. So, it's one of those things when you're watching the scary movie and you're like, don't open the door, don't do that, don't do it. You know the killer's behind the door because they set the music for it, right? But you know that, and you know that they're going to do it anyhow because they don't know the same thing. The next one, and this is the one that people get mixed up a lot of times, and really I think if you remember what it is, this is the twist in the story, right? So this is the unexpected thing, and that's situational irony. So situational irony is, I don't know, I don't want to ruin movies for people, but there's some movies that you'll watch, and then all of a sudden at the end you realize that the character, I'm thinking there's multiple ones out there where like a character has a best friend, and you go along and you think that they're best friends and they spend all their time together and they do everything together, and then you find out that the person has a split personality and that best friend is actually imaginary. I can think of probably 4 or 5 movies off the top of my head. Or there's the one, what's the Bruce Willis one? There's a Bruce Willis movie where like he has a little kid who can talk.
Oh, The Sixth Sense?
So, yeah. And so the whole time you're sitting there going, oh gosh, he's trying to, and then at the end you're like, oh my gosh, he's
Spoiler.
dead. Right? Like that's situational irony. You're like, what? So that's
Shyamalan movies.
yeah, it's anytime you get that
It always has a
twist,
twist.
right? That crazy twist in the story where you're like, whoa, wait a minute, I didn't see that coming. And then you start piecing together all the things that happened before in order to make it. And you're like, I guess that does work. Those of you who read The Landlady, okay, this was something that was certainly in The Landlady for those of you who read that one during your foreshadowing unit. But this is often a twist in the story, something unexpected. And one of the things too is if you foreshadow something else the whole movie, or you set up something the whole time, and there's these other little clues that exist, but then at the end you twist it on itself, that's situational irony. So it doesn't come out the way you expect. And I think this one's a great example. I stole this one, but in Roald Dahl's A Lamb to Slaughter, a woman kills her husband. Okay, that's bad. She kills her husband with a frozen leg of lamb. When the cops arrive, she cooks the lamb and feeds it to them, effectively making them eat the evidence. Bizarre. From this sample, we see how a strong reactions from the readers by presenting them with carefully executed twists and turns. Because of the inherent element of surprise, in situationally ironic storylines, they're often employed in thriller, crime, and mystery genres. So if you are doing one of these, this is the perfect type of irony for you to add to your story. If you're doing anything that's a thriller or a crime piece or a mystery, or anytime you really want to shock people. So that's situational irony. And the last one is verbal irony. And you guys know verbal irony. Everybody does. The intended meaning of a statement is the opposite of what is meant. Sarcasm is verbal irony. So all of you who know sarcasm, it is verbal irony. However, usually when we're talking about it in literature, it doesn't have that sting. It's not malicious. It's not mean. It's just like, but it's sort of those sarcastic comments or sarcastic things that people can say. Like it says here, some examples, clear as mud. You know, what you really mean is that I don't get what you're saying at all when you say that. You know, friendly as a rattlesnake, or about as much fun as a root canal. You know, all of those, we've all heard this, we've all done it, we've said it. And it's whenever you're doing those things where what you're saying is literally the opposite of what you mean. So that's the three basic types of irony. There are some other ones out there, but they all sort of are subcategories of these three. So if you're looking through stuff and you find something else, usually they're one of these types. Verbal irony can also include things like there's different types. There's things like if you see something as jumbo shrimp or something like that, that's a type of verbal irony. That's a specific type. So, but we're kind of looking for you to use this in a way to, you know, verbal irony can tend to bring a lot of character to people, or to show that sometimes people are just frustrated with something. Dramatic irony tends to make the audience get really involved because they usually want the characters to do something different than what they are likely to do for whatever reason. And situational irony, of course, is really great for that surprise, adding an element of surprise so it isn't a really predictable story. So that's the basics of that. So here's a great story, another piece of microfiction. This is my new favorite thing, I think. But why don't you help us out here?
All right. So this piece of microfiction is entitled Go Fetch. Throw it. Come on, just throw it. Wait. He's going to throw it now. Now. He threw it. He threw it. He threw it. Oh, wow. What a shot. Go, go. Come on. I almost got it. Almost got it. Almost. Wait. And I got it. I got it. And the crowd goes wild in the stadium. What a great catch and what a great game. Later that evening, when he is home, he throws the ball for his dog and shakes his head. The dog bounds off immediately, focused entirely on this small moving object in a vast, wide universe. They are such simple creatures, he thinks, that such simple, pointless activities give them pleasure.
I love this little story. I just ran into this one the other day, actually. So I think that you could have taken really almost anything that's in the italics there and shown how those sort of juxtapose the two things. And this is a great parallel structure in this particular story because we see the whole first sort of section there is completely about the guy, right? And clearly he is playing some sort of probably football game, I'm imagining. At least that's what I imagine in my head because they're throwing the ball and he's getting it. But it could be almost anything. It could be basketball or something too, I imagine. But I love this. And the crowd goes wild in the stadium, right? So we have this situation here where the crowd goes wild in the stadium, and what a great game. And so obviously all of us humans have in it. So this could be, but you could almost take this exact same thing and figure that's what the dog was thinking in this next section. So I think what's going on here, I mean, we have this parallel structure of the guys doing it, then the dog's doing it. But what makes it ironic is his comment at the end where he says, they are such simple creatures, he thinks, that such simple, pointless activities give them pleasure. Because as far as what we want to say here, right, this could be either our situational or our dramatic. The situation that he's doing the same thing as his dog and not even realizing it, and his lack of understanding that he does literally the same thing is very much dramatic irony. That's something where we as the reader understand that, whereas he may not. And it also, by adding that he thinks it's such simple, pointless activities, kind of gives that twist. So I think you could argue for either the dramatic irony, how we know more than he knows for this, or you could go for situational. Both answers are correct, but you have to kind of frame how you make that discussion a little different. Because if you're going for the other thing, it's that the twist in the story or the change for the situational is that he thinks they're simple, pointless activities and that they're simple creatures as a result. So that's what we do with this this irony piece, and you can see here that you can come up with a couple of different answers for how that works. Did you see anything else there, Mr. Strebel?
I just like the whole comparison of, it's almost the exact same activity, but because it's, person versus a dog, it kind of comes in, throws in such a different light in the guy's point of view in the story. I just enjoy that.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's cute. Comparison. And that comparison is what we get out of the parallel structure. So if, for those of you who are like trying to figure out how to do it, they didn't add all the stuff that happened in the middle of the day in there. But by putting those two right next to each other like that, we do end up comparing it. And it does give us a lot more meaning as a result.
All right. And so, again, we have 3 stories that you can choose from our story playlist on Common Lit. First one is the story of the Bad Little Boy, and that's Mark Twain's story. And trying trying to give away, but it kind of just goes over like what the title says, a very little boy and what happens to very little boys. It's a pretty good one. The next one is The Necklace, and I don't know how much I want to give away, but that's a good one about losing something and freaking out about how to fix the situation. And good lesson about freaking out over a situation as well, without knowing how everything should end. And then lastly is The Monkey's Paw. Again, dealing with irony in a very big way, except this one's kind of more like about curses, and it's like a little bit more of like a, not so much like a horror story, but kind of definitely trending towards that end of like curses and magic and things like that. So if you're more into like a little bit of the fantasy stuff, I would recommend Monkey's Paw. Necklace is a very good story, and I think it's actually maybe like one of the strongest examples of irony out of the three. I really like how that one ends. Great lesson in that story, I think.
It's a classic.
Yeah, you might have read it already. Actually, another classic. It is a classic. A lot of people have read it. Like I said, that's a great lesson in that one. And then Bad Little Boys, we're just like a little fun story, a little fun Mark Twain story.
Yeah, Mark Twain is a satirist, so he likes to make fun of people. So you can imagine some ideas here. And
so it's a little less plot, but more satire and some more comedy actually in that one. So if you're in the mood for some like satirical comedy, actually, Bad Little Boy might be a good choice for you.
So once you've done that, and you've actually read through things, then the next thing that you're going to be doing is identifying the irony in the story. And you're going to be looking for at least 2 instances, so 2 places that you saw irony. And it can be any of those 3. So like even in that little microfiction piece, I found 2 types of irony, right? I found dramatic irony and I found situational irony. So I'm pretty sure in your stories, you're going to be able to find a few different places for this. So 2 instances, and then you're going to define the type of irony that it is. So you're going to say it's either situational, verbal, or dramatic irony. Why you think it's that type of irony. So just like I explained to you, if I'm thinking about what the audience knows and how the audience knows one thing to be true and the character doesn't, then that's the explanation that I need to say for dramatic irony. Or why it's a twist in the story would be the explanation, why that was something that came that was unexpected. That might be if you're talking situational, or if you're talking about how, well, actually they said this, but what they really meant was this. That would be when you're talking about verbal irony. And then finally, what effect does this have? Like, why do you think they chose to use that?
And again, you're going to take this lesson and apply it to your own story. Consider the characters and the events that are happening. Think about how you can use irony to improve your story. And try to identify 2 places in your story that you want to use this irony. And another thing is that since there's 3 different types, if you already have like a solid story going, you don't necessarily need to change a whole lot of things. Think about some of the language examples that we gave you. Clear as mud. You can add in like little small examples of irony if you don't really want to rearrange a bunch of things in your story. You can just add it in your dialogue even. And so think about, even if you're going, that less invasive way to put it in, well, think about the best place. Think about a situation where a character would want to say a phrase like that. Think about what could accomplish what the character's saying. And again, you can go even deeper. If you're still in early rough draft stages, maybe you can write in more of a situational irony. About things that depend on the point of view of the story. The reader might know something that the characters don't. A lot of different ways you can add it into your story. So if you have something kind of already set up, as with all these lessons, don't worry. There's a lot of easy ways to kind of add these things in if you already have a good idea going. Yeah,
and just same thing. Just find 2 things, and you'll see that you have a worksheet that's coming to you. Either it's on your flash drive, or else it's on Google Classroom. But whichever one you decide to use, that's fine. I don't care. If you decide to do it on paper and you still like to just send me a picture, you can do that, or you can upload things onto that flash drive, whatever is fine. But just make sure that you identify 2 places, because the other reason why we want to do that is so that when I'm giving you credit on your story for whether or not you did something, I want to know where to look for it. I don't want to miss it somehow. So that's something just to think about. And as we said before, as I said just a few minutes ago, when we are done with the prep work for this short story. We had a couple more things that we were going to do, but I want to give you plenty of time to be able to write. So when you finish this, we really have the next 2 weeks. I have it technically written down that the next week is just for you to catch up on anything that you've missed. So if you've missed something, go back. You know, if you didn't do the setting lesson, if you didn't do one of the other lessons or something that I'm going to hold you accountable for, then make sure you go back and you have all of that work done. And that's really the first week. But if you've already done everything, which I know there's a dozen of you that have, that you haven't missed a thing yet, then this is the time for you to really go back and work on a rough draft. If you already wrote a whole rough draft, because there's a couple people who have done that they didn't do just the outline, but they actually wrote the rough draft. This is just time to make sure that irony really is in the story and it's kind of smoothly transitions in. You know, all of that stuff is sort of taken care of. And then the next week, after you have everything all up to date, so you have 1 week to get that done, then you're going to get a week to write, which 5 pages means you're writing 1 page a day. You know, you can sit down and decide you're going to write all of that all at once and have the whole week's worth of work done. That's probably what I would do, just because I like to keep my flow going. But if you are I want to do just a bit at a time person, that's 1 page a day. But you'll have that week to write your story. Like I said, it can go over, but you know, that's up to you. You only have to have 5 pages. And then after that, after the rough draft, I will be getting all of those, and I will be giving you tons of feedback on what to do and how to fix it. And then the last thing to do for here will really be to complete that story, to get a final draft. And you can get extra credit by sending it in for someone else, and getting it published somehow. So these are the things that we have to do. I may end up throwing in, because I really don't know when the end of the school year is yet. So we may end up doing some reading journals where you just read something and then, you know, give me, I know all of you received a whole bunch of really good books. So, you know, where you pick up a book and decide to read and then just kind of give us a few reading journals or something in those other times. But this is the last really big thing for us to complete. So I really, really cannot stress how much I miss everybody. I wish we were all here and talking to each other and bouncing ideas off each other in the normal way. But that being said, if you feel like you really need to do some of that bouncing ideas or anything like that, get a hold of us. If you are like, I just don't know what to do with this story, or I think something's wrong, but I don't know why, I am more than happy to set up a Zoom call with you you can see, we can share stuff, we can look at things, and just try to do that. Otherwise, you know, you can send me an email. We can, you know, obviously we still are using Remind for all sorts of like small questions that people have, but we can set something up no matter what, one way or another.
And yeah, again, same ways you can reach me. Also, if you need me to talk you through something, just call the school number and then down my extension 4447. It'll come right to my home phone. If I don't pick up, just leave me a message, don't worry at all, because it just shows up behind. And also just a general piece of information, because a couple people have asked, now that the school year, at least meeting in person, is officially canceled for the rest of the year. A couple of students have asked about lockers and locker clean out. There will be a plan coming from administration at some point, and that information will be passed on to everybody else, students and teachers, and you'll figure out how to do that.
Yeah, because we really know what you guys know, as far as how all of this works. I know we also have said something about grading, and it is likely that our grades are going to be sort of a pass-fail for this quarter. But you have to pass the quarter. So as long as you are doing something, I realize I'm not there to answer questions the way I normally am. Of course, you can ask me, as you know, some of you have been doing a fantastic job of keeping in touch. But
if you can prove this, and this is like state guidelines, if you can prove that you're learning at home, you'll earn yourself a fourth quarter pass.
yeah, and you'll get that pass just by making sure if you get all of this stuff done and you are trying, you know, you're at least doing the best that you can, you're going to get that pass. And, you know, I thank goodness we took that Regents exam, because that can help us too, to help us know that you're doing really, you know, that you really do have those skills. Final piece, if you did not do well in one of the previous quarters, I am more than willing to help you and to get those grades up, so that we still don't know, and we won't know till the end of this month. We're not going to know about whether or not summer school is something that's going to be allowed to happen or not. So you really don't want to be in that situation. But Mr. Tadone has said that we are allowed to go back and have you make up things that you missed. We are allowed to put some extra credit into there. So we have lots of ways to make it so nobody should need to have that. The only thing that I do ask from you is that, you know, that you keep up with this work, you do what you can, and we'll try to get everything all aligned so that nobody has to be worrying about whether or not summer school is something they are going to need or they're not going to need. Because like I said, we have no idea how that's going to work it right now.
Yep, no better time. Just make the effort and you'll be fine. But you just got to make some effort. It's going to be the easiest pass you can get, as long as you're just doing the work and getting to us. You'll be fine.
Yep. So we miss you. We want to see everybody be successful. I wish we were all here together, but that's unfortunately not able to be the case. So we'll see you guys. And at least with you, we get to see you next year.